King Jr. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to share my Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with you. And I say my Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I say that for a reason. To be honest with you, I did not know who this great man was until that fatal day, April the 4th, 1968. Allow me to share some personal with you. At this time, I was in my 4th foster home. I was a victim of any type of child abuse you can imagine. This particular night, we were watching the Mod Squad. Anybody remember the Mod Squad? Okay, that was a regular in our house. Everybody had to watch. There was no excuse. You had to watch the Mod Squad. And Clarence William III, who was one of the first African-American men, young men, to appear to star in a primetime television drama. Mr. Williams, as I remember, he had a big old afro. And I think his character name was Link. And at this time, Link was about to capture the criminal. And he was about to, this is the motion that they showed him. When all of a sudden, we had the news break. At 11 years old, I'll never forget what I heard at that moment. This is an NBC special bulletin. Good evening. I'm David Brinkley. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was just shot a few minutes ago while standing on the balcony at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, I will tell you, me not knowing who this man was, and forgive me, or better yet, I'm not even going to say forgive me. I know we live in a political correct world now, but I'm just going to keep it real. I got upset. I was mad because they interrupted the program. Because I didn't know who this man was. But I could feel the air coming out of all the adults that were in that room at that time. The next night, which was April the 5th, we were instructed on West Stroder Street in Baltimore, Maryland, where I was born. We were instructed to put black flags on our cars, on our doors. We were not allowed as children. We could not come out the house for a whole week. And ladies and gentlemen, believe me, when we did come out that house, it looked like Afghanistan. It looked like a third world country had hit in the city of Baltimore with all the rioting that took place. And we also saw on TV, if you remember, they showed the funeral. And again, me as a little child, I was bewildered as to how this man, laying in a casket, is giving his own funeral. I didn't know that he had actually did this in 1964 at a presentation that he did. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. It wasn't until my years in New York as a teenager that I really started buckling down on great people like Dr. Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, Adam Clayton Powell, but I took a special interest in Dr. King. And Dr. King didn't know this, but he started forming my life, because I really didn't have a role model per se. But he became sort of kind of a role model for me. And he made me want to study a little bit more about who he was and what he stood for and what kind of contribution he made in my personal life. Now, I will state that in August of 1963, that day of August the 28th, when he is a black man who managed to get 280,000 people to meet on the mall, where he gave us that tremendous speech, I Have a Dream. That year of 1963, myself, now I'm aging myself, I was in the 1st grade. 1964, they bust us. They shut down our all-black school, Turner Station Elementary in Turner Station, Maryland. And they bust us to Dundalk Elementary. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not what I saw on TV. This is what really happened. As we rolled up to this white school, Dundalk Elementary, I can see it just as vivid now, where there were soldiers, National Guardmen, standing outside. And we, as the black kids that were on that bus, of course we were nervous, we were scared. And the National Guardmen came up on the bus, and I was sitting in my regular seat, which was on top of that back tire, because when we go over the tracks, I can bounce up. And he came in and he gave us a speech. Because as we looked out the window, we saw these white people out here with the signs, with the bricks, and yes, they were calling us the N-words and little monkeys, and anything you can imagine, that's what we were. And this man, National Guardsman, came on and he said, children, when we get ready to move, I want you to follow me, and as we walk towards the door, don't look at those people. You look straight ahead. Because he knew that if we looked at those people, we would be even more frightened. Because those people were looking at us with the signs of destroying us. So we made it to the school without any hesitation. But I can't tell you how scared I was as a little child at that moment of my life. Quite naturally, because of this man, things started to get a little better. Now, some of you all remember the Selma, the March on Selma. As a matter of fact, back in 1999, I took a trip. I left Tampa, Florida. I went to Montgomery, Alabama. I stayed in Montgomery, Alabama for exactly 2 weeks. I managed to go to the oldest church in Alabama, Montgomery, which was an AME church, and at that time it was like 109 years old at the time. I managed to go to the Dexter Avenue Memorial Baptist Church, which was named after, or should I say, Martin's third son. Dexter was named after, or Dexter was named after the church, I'm sorry. And I had the great blessing to meet the pastor who was there at the time. And here, matter of fact, April the 27th, 1997. This is the original program from that day of service, of me visiting this church. Now, I will tell you that I asked the pastor, could I go up in the sanctuary? He allowed me to go up into the sanctuary. Ladies and gentlemen, I was in the sanctuary by myself. And I walked up and I sat right here. There was no one else in this sanctuary but me. And I sat right here. And I was just sitting here in a quiet mode. And I must have sat there for maybe 10 minutes before I could actually hear Dr. King preaching. It was totally weird. And before it was all said and done, I had got up and walked out with tears in my eyes. Because I had the opportunity to actually hear, to visualize Dr. King preaching in this church. And when I went downstairs to the basement, there's a mural, and I'll show you. There's a mural that was on the wall downstairs. And this here, I don't know if you can see this. This is a mural from Montgomery to Memphis that was on the bottom wall, and this is a brochure that I picked up. In all my travels, I always managed to pick up something in remembrance of this man. I had the great pleasure, I don't know if anyone recalls when Martin Luther King III he spoke in St. Petersburg some years back. I don't know if anybody remember that. That was my first meeting and encounter with Martin III. And I must say that in my encounter with this great man, the son of, when I shook his hand, I could feel something going up my arm, radiation. And it just felt weird. And I had the opportunity to talk with him, as well as his baby boy, who now runs the King Center in Atlanta. And this is a picture when I had black hair in my younger days of myself and the baby girl Bernice King, who currently runs the King Center in Atlanta. Now, these pictures that you see, a lot of these pictures are original pictures that I've taken either at the King Center or on some of my trips throughout. My main mission is to teach about Dr. King and some of these great individuals who have walked through this earth to help us get where we are. Ladies and gentlemen, I work with a lot of kids. And when I hear kids, when I question them about who Dr. King was, and the only thing they can tell me is that, well, Dr. King, he hates a guy. He's that dude that had a speech. As you see, and I'm guaranteeing you that on the 18th of this month, when you watch the local news, they're going to have a snippet. And on this snippet, they're going to give us a snippet of Dr. King giving an I have a dream speech, and that will be the extent of it. So when I hear young kids say, well, we don't get this in our schools, they don't teach us this. It's up to us to keep the dream alive. It's up to us to teach our kids who this man was. As a matter of fact, my son, who was born on November the 22nd, he's 37 years old. Every year on his birthday, I quiz him to what happened on November the 22nd of 1963. He's 37 years old, but I'm in his face to make sure he knows what history is about. And now that I'm speaking November the 22nd, we talk about, and I mean, personally, I think President John Kennedy was one of the best presidents we had. But then when you look at the backstory between President Kennedy and what happened with Reverend Martin Luther King in the family, as is stated, and in my research and in my reading, believe it or not, President Kennedy really did not want to have anything to do with Dr. King. But it's amazing, while Dr. King was incarcerated, which they were planning to take him out of the fold. If we can get this man out of here, get him out of the fold, they were looking to give him at least 10 years of prison time. But it was John Kennedy who needed the black vote. So you know where I'm going. It was John Kennedy who needed the black vote. So John Kennedy had a conversation with an individual as to how can I get the black vote? He said, well, the black vote is doing 10 years in prison right now. And he said, well, who is this person with all these votes? His name is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So he got the number to Mrs. King, and he had a conversation. And Mrs. King said, all you have to do is get my husband home. If you can get him home, you got the votes. So between John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, Martin came home. But when Martin came home, as we know, something drastic happened in the city that I visited for 2 weeks, Montgomery. Something happened, and it started happening on December the 1st of 1955. Where this beautiful young lady, who was a seamstress, working for the NAACP locally, was tired after a long day of work. And when she sat on the bus, pardon me, not in the back of the bus, but when she sat at the first seat that was available by the window, she began to get chastised. When a gentleman came up, a white man came up and said, wait a minute, you got my seat, you need to get out. And Miss Parks responded by, well, I'm tired. You do as you please. And this same man responded to the bus driver who looked through the mirror and called Miss Parks every name but her name and told her she better get up out that seat, which again, she refused. And when the bus came to the corner there and they saw an officer there, the officer got up on the bus and threatened Miss Parks and said, you get one chance to get out this seat or else. Well, you know the story. The or else. And they took her to jail. And the word traveled. And as the word traveled, the NAACP said, wait a minute, we need to find somebody. Who can we find to lead a movement? That movement, the civil rights movement. Well, they found somebody. And as I stated earlier, he was 26 years old at the time. And just imagine a 26-year-old man stepping up to lead the movement. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can I turn the dial from 1955 to 2016? We got a great amount of young African-American males nowadays that are 26 years old. We need them to step up to the leadership plate. We don't need them at 26, 16, laying in the casket. Now, I'm going to turn back to dial, but since I'm here, now I don't know how you feel about Black Lives Matter. I don't feel. And I'll tell you why I don't feel. I don't feel because, yes, it's not right for a white officer to kill us like they do, but I don't hear Black Lives Matter when it's us killing us. When it's us killing us, I don't hear them. But I hear them when a white cop is killing us, which is wrong as well. November, I had to leave Tampa to go to Baltimore because my nephew was shot down. And I'm still waiting. We're still waiting for them to catch the shooters. While I was in Baltimore for the Christmas holiday, are you ready for this? They started off the year with 7 murders. They ended the year with 345 murders. Most of those murders were not white cops. Most of those murders were who, ladies and gentlemen? Us. So let me go back to December of 1955. When Dr. Martin Luther King spoke at the church and he said, okay, well look, we're not going to go out and beat them. We're not going to fight them. We're going to fight them with peaceful means. The peaceful means that we're going to use is boycott. And it's so amazing when I look at videos of days gone by, how all these people protested in their own simple way of boycotting. Now, nowadays, as I look out, I see this beautiful van here. I mean, you can carry how many people? If you had to, you can carry maybe 10, 15, maybe squeeze 20 in there. Now look at the vehicles they used back then with the hunchback, and you had 20 people jammed in there trying to get to their jobs. For 365 days, some walked, canes, some walked, some rolled, some even was on their backs, get to their destination. But we're going to cripple this Montgomery bus system. And when it was all said and done, 365 days later, the bus system said that, well, you know, you colored folks can sit anywhere you want. But I'm still bewildered, though. Because me, a product of the 70s, I tell you, I pull no punches. Yes, I used to sit in the back. As a matter of fact, you know, when you get on the bus and you had that middle seat right there in the back, that was my seat, in the back. But as we progress, the question becomes, if people fought for your freedom to sit where you desire, in the front, the middle, why do we cram to the back? When somebody has fought for your freedom. When we talk about what took place in 1963, Dr. King talked in 1965, flashback into 1963, and he said, I had a dream. But I stand before you now and seeing my dream destroyed. I still see us being killed. I still see the economical situation depressing us more so. And of course, the poor white people of this country. I still see the check that we went to Washington, D.C. still has not been written. Let's dial forth to 2016. We're still waiting on that check. But this man who said to the public, when he was asked, Marty, you know your life is on the line. And he talked about that night when he was home and Coretta was in the room asleep, and his brand new baby, I'm sorry, help me out, she died at the age of 50. Pardon me. Yolanda, thank you. She died at the age of 50. Matter of fact, a year after Coretta. And she was just a baby then. And Martin was in the study late that night, maybe about 12 o'clock that night. He said he got a call. He answered the phone. And these were calls that they would get all the time. If you don't get your black self out this city, we're going to give you 48 hours to get out of here. And if you don't get out of here, we're going to come and we're going to bomb your house. And we're going to show that everybody in that house is dead. We're going to teach you a lesson, Martin Luther King. When Martin said, when he hung up the phone, he thought he was scared. And he went in the room and he looked at Coretta while she was asleep. He just stood there and looked at her for a few minutes. He backed out the room and he went to the room where Yolanda was at. He looked at her for a few minutes. And he went back to his study. And he said he got on his knees. And he said a prayer to God because he was scared. He was scared for him and he was scared for his family. But he said when he got off his knees, he said, God told me to go forth no matter what. Because our people need to be free. We can talk about Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover. Now, how many of you know that up to this point, he was the only director of the FBI? There was no other FBI director before him. He was the man. And how he wiretapped Doctor. How he had informers surrounding Doctor. He even had the chauffeur who chauffeured the doctor was an FBI informant. When I found out after reading when Doctor got a shot and laying there, if you see the picture of the man pointing like this, he was an informant. All these informants that are around, pardon me, they were not white informants, they were not Hispanic informants, they were not Asian informants, they was not Muslim informants, Iraqi informants. Well, they were not aliens sent down from above. They were black informants. J. Edgar Hoover, used us to turn on us. As a matter of fact, when Martin Luther King Jr. in 1964 went to Norway to pick up his award, his Nobel Peace Prize award, J. Edgar Hoover had the nerve to come out on front page of the New York Times and say that Martin Luther King ain't nothing but a liar. He don't deserve that. And Martin was hurt. He publicized that he was hurt to Andrew Young, one of his lieutenants. And he arranged a meeting in Washington, D.C. at the FBI quarters to go in to have a meeting with J. Edgar Hoover. He said when he walked in, there were maybe 3 or 4 black men in there with nice suits on, standing around. Just standing there. And J. Edgar said, yeah, these black men here, these are my FBI agents. Well, as the story goes, they were his agents, all right. When he sat down, they came over and removed his jacket. They made sure he was comfortable in his seat. They made sure his documents were arranged neatly on his desk. They were his servants. And Martin said when he left that meeting, he was even more disturbed than ever. And at that time, when Martin publicized that he was disturbed and he didn't agree with J. Edgar Hoover, Mr. Hoover made an assignment to assure that wherever and whatever Martin Luther King Jr. did, we was going to be on top of him. We are out to destroy this Negro. So he could not go anywhere. But the beautiful thing of it is, Martin knew that he was being tagged. He knew that there were informants inside. But the great thing about it, though, when his informants reported back to Hoover, they constantly gave back inconsistent information. Because Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, Ralph Abernathy, of course Dr. King and a few other lieutenants, they knew who they were, but they didn't know who the King peoples were. Switch tracks a little bit. This outfit that I'm wearing, I wear it every January. I wear this outfit here that you see. It is Wrangler. The picture back on the wall there, on that green board back there, the green board, the middle picture to the right, you see a jacket sitting up there. You see his suitcase open. You see the boots. This is my memory and commemoration of Dr. King. And as I travel the country in January to do presentations on Dr. King, this is my normal wear. I wear this because 9 times out of 10, if you look at Dr. King when he went on his marches, this is what he wore. The Wrangler, the jeans, the boots, and he would have on a nice collared shirt such as you see there. And of course, his hat. It's a beautiful thing when I look back on these videos and I see all these black people crammed up in churches. And how I see all these black people that are singing the glorious hymns of Jesus Christ. And saying that no matter what, we are not turning back. We've come too far to turn back now. But we can also look at the glorification of what this man did. As a matter of fact, as I look over here and I see Dr. King walking with Ralph Abernathy, if you notice, every time they began to walk or every time the police stopped them, this is what they did. They prayed. And to see the police come and grab Dr. King, not by the collar, but to grab him by the back of his pants buckle and pull him up and drag him to the jail cells. I think about all these young black males back then who were in prison for a movement from 16 years old, as a matter of fact, in Birmingham, Alabama, when all those kids ran out of school, high school, and junior high school, running downtown to take part in this revolution. And all these kids said, regardless if we go to jail today, we're going to jail, but we're going to fight for our freedom. And these kids going to jail, and they show the video of these kids behind these bars laughing. And they're singing, freedom, 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 freedom. We want our freedom. We don't care what you do to us. Freedom. And when I dial it forward, and I see our young brothers that are going to jail today. There's an original magazine from 1986, Ebony, that I still have on the table over here. The question is, have we lost the dream? Have we lost the dream? We've come so far, but have we lost the dream? Robert Kennedy said in 1968 that in 40 years, America will have its first black president. That's amazing. That Robert Kennedy, the late Robert Kennedy, said that in 40 years, America will have its first black president. 40 years later, from 1968, ladies and gentlemen, 2008. President Barack Obama. And in the 8 years, or 7.5 years, or 7 years, because he has one more, and he's at the town hall meeting last week, he said, I got one more year. Can you imagine the President of the United States giving a State of the Union address. And someone out in the audience did not say, "Get your hands out my pocket." But someone in the audience said, "You're liar," to the President of the United States. How far have we really come from yesterday to today? Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Ladies and gentlemen, on the day that Dr. King was assassinated, all kinds of fatalities began to happen. His brother A.D., for some of you all who recall, was found in the swimming pool. In 1974, I believe it was, or maybe 73, the Honorable Mrs. King, the doctor's mother, was in church playing the organ when a deranged lunatic came in. And he wasn't really looking for her, he was looking for the king himself, Dr. King's dad. Since he couldn't find him, and he saw Mama King, he reached out to her with a bullet. And he took her out while she was playing the organ in church on Sunday morning. So you got A.D. and you got the mother. But the great thing about it, though, we still have Christine is still with us. That's the oldest sister. She is still living to this day, and every year she goes on tour to speak on her brother Martin and the King family. I would invite everyone, if you have not, visit the King site on Auburn Street in Atlanta, Georgia, to take that trip. Now, things have changed because of the 911 situation, but I recall when I went the first time I went in 1985, I had the opportunity to travel all through the house, to sit on Martin's bed, to go into the parents' room, and various other things. Quite naturally, you can't do that now. You have a tour guide, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the first floor is it. You can't even get to the second floor anymore. But if anything, please, take your children, teach your children about the things that Dr. Martin Luther King did, what he fought for, what he meant, and why are we as black folks here in 2016? What it means for our young children that are coming up. As I glaze back, I see those 3 young babies that just walked in. What it means to them. Or these babies that's coming in the door, and this tall young brother that's coming in the door. That is our future walking here. Are we going to let, and I'm going there, somebody might get upset, but are we going to let Nicki Minaj take our young girls? Deal with it. Are we going to let Kanye West, Future, Meek Hill, and a few others that the young brothers tell me about take our kids? Because when we talk to them about these great leaders, they have no want, no knowledge, and don't care. But you know what they told me? They said if you don't have a foundation, you are lost forever. And hearing that, it took me to step out of my comfortable surroundings to start tracing my life and where I come from. And ladies and gentlemen, I found out that they put the Dowridges on a boat. And I'm still trying to find out what our African name was. But when we got to Great Britain, they gave us Dowridge. They attached the Dowridge to us. Then they put us on a boat and they brought us over to Jamaica. Well, I found out my grandfather, and I want to thank, where my brother at? Where my man at? There he is. I want to thank my man here. Because at the Black Heritage Festival a couple of years ago, he said, "Brother, I got something for you." I said, "Okay." I'm thinking maybe it's $50 or something. But he came back with a historical line of my life. And even further back, when I took it upon myself, I found out that from South Carolina, we migrated to Baltimore. But then when I read the literature that my brother gave me, I found out that yes, John L. Dowridge, I'll never forget that, thank you, sir. John L. Dowridge, a white man, was my great-great-grandfather. Mary Dowridge, my great-great-grandmother. And I found out that my grandfather, we called him Church, only met him 3 times in Baltimore. He migrated from Jamaica. Come to find out he had 3 cleaners in Baltimore. He was an entrepreneur. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm an entrepreneur. I got the spirit. My son, who was 37, before Christmas called me, he said, Dad, I got this feeling going on inside of me. I don't know what it is. I said, what are you talking about, son? I let him explain. I knew what it was. He said, I don't want to work for nobody no more. I said, okay. And this is what he really said. He said, I don't want to work for white people no more. I feel something. I said, well, what is it, son? Do I need to get you to the hospital or something with this feeling? He said, no, I feel I need to get out and do my own thing. And I told him this 10 years ago. You know why I told him this? Because here's a young man who could take, sir, he could take your car. Sir, he could take your car. Ma'am, he could take your car. Take the engine out of all 3 and then reverse the engines and put them back in cars. And all 3 of you will ride away like you got a 2016. Wow. And I say, son, why are you wasting this talent? You have a gift. God has given you something. Entrepreneurship. So he stepped out. Ladies and gentlemen, let me go into another piece. NBA, and I'm not talking about National Basketball Association. I'm talking about natural born abilities. That's what God gave us. BET. I'm not talking about Black Entertainment Television that is now owned by Viacom. It's not owned by Deborah Lee, the sister you see sitting over there on the award show, and they say, Miss Deborah Lee, come up. That is not the owner. She's the COO. BET, bound to excel in triumph. Every day you live. As you know, we just lost some great ones. Natalie Cole. We just lost Mr. Clay, 72, a great bluesman. Ladies and gentlemen, time is of an essence. And it's up to us to teach our young folks that are coming up behind us. No pun intended, white folks teach theirs. So how are we letting ours just go by the wayside? We buy them a pair of Nikes that come at $350 and we set them on. We buy them a PS4 and we set them on. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of us don't know that the PS4, the Xbox, was invented by a black man who died 2011. I forget his name. And I'm amazed because I just found this out 3 weeks ago. Being, look, signifying on Facebook. You know, we got everybody on Facebook like, I just went to the bathroom. But here I am signifying, and I come to find out some great black history. Being nosy. Tell your kids to be nosy. But be nosy in the right direction. Not grown folk nosy, but knowledge nosy. A lot of our kids, what happened? They want to be doctors and lawyers, but they get lost somewhere along the line. And we have no one to blame but ourselves. My nephew told me a couple of years ago in South Carolina, while we were visiting in South Carolina, I was in a deep discussion about the way we are and how we are, and the Willie Lynch letter, etc., etc. And my nephew came in and he said, Uncle Don, no pun intended, but it's your generation's fault that we are like we are. Not your generation, sir. Not your generation. My generation. That means that we're the ones who are on the tail end of the baby boom. If you're born in 1956 and before that, a little bit before that, it's our fault. Why is it our fault? Because of the harsh treatment that we received as children, and when we got to the point where we said, you know what? I ain't going to treat my kids like that. So we began to spare the rod. And so every generation after that, don't beat your kids. And I ain't saying kill them. But you can't spank them. School, there's no praying in school. So what's going on? Everybody's running around. Kids are not afraid of their parents anymore. As a matter of fact, my son here, just use it, because he's looking at me like, you my daddy. My son here is, oh, you want to get that? He's looking at me. He's like, well, if I do something or chastise this young son of mine, he comes out and he says, I'm calling the police on you. I'm taking you to court. Well, can I be honest? My son is this tall, that wide. When he was in the 7th grade and he got in some trouble, I took him home and he said, if you touch me, I'm calling the police. So you know what I did? You remember the old phone? I gave him the phone. I gave him the phone before I became unstrapped. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, because usually when I go in and I talk to the kids and I say I'm strapped, some of them get up and want to run under the... I say, no, you're okay. I just got a belt on. That's all that means. I got a belt on. And when we talk about the prison mentality, Dr. Martin Luther King did not stand and give his life for us to be walking around like we're prisoners. And it got to the point now where our young brothers, they don't care. They don't care. So they walk around sad. They don't care. Our young sisters that got to the point, they don't care. Call me an itch. I know I'm a bad itch. They call each other that name. What's going on, itch? And I'm like, how do you do that? Because I'm an itch. You're greater than that. God don't make junk. God don't, we're not animals. We don't walk on all fours. We're intelligent. But we put ourselves down because of what we allow to go in our heads. We put ourselves down because we put our kids in front of the media, the television. And on the television, you don't see us 99% of the time. So who's feeding who? Don't be like the populace. Be like yourself. The king and the queen that you were born to be. And since I got to catch it on it with the kids in here, understand, my young, powerful people. You come from kings. You come from queens. Stand up and be what you're supposed to be. Not a follower, but a leader. And I'll say this before I begin to wrap up, because I want to share a speech from Dr. King. For everybody in here, we know our phones. Let me ask you a question. How many of you all got a GPS on your phone? How many of you all got a GPS in your car? You know the new cars? Well, whenever you get lost from this point on, I want you to use your GPS. Your GPS will help you every time, and it'll never fail you as long as you use your GPS. What GPS am I talking about? God's personal service. Before I take my seat, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share the last 8 minutes in 16 seconds, if I can, of Dr. King's last speech. I've been to the mountaintop. Dr. King was tired that night. He wanted to rest. But Jesse burst in the door and said, Doctor, we got to go to the church tonight because the parishioners, they're rowdy. They want you to be there tonight. So as Doctor took the podium and began to speak, which I'm not going to get into, but then when he got to the last 8 minutes, this is what he gave them. Let us rise up tonight with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. And let us move on. And these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you. You know, came up. The only question I heard from her was, "Are you Martin Luther King?" And as I was looking down, writing, and I said, "Yes." The next minute, I felt something beat on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this diminutive woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. That blade had gone through, and x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that is punctured, you drown in your own blood. That's the end of it. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in a wheelchair within the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in from all over the states and the world. Kind letters came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I had received one from the president and the vice president. I had forgotten what those telegrams had said. I received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter that came in from a little girl, a young girl, who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter, and I will never forget it. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School." She said, "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I am a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering, and I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. I'm simply writing to say I am so happy that you didn't sneeze. And I want to say to you tonight, I really want to say to you tonight, that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. Because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here for 1960, when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, that they were really standing up for the best in the American dream and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy, which was dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here for 1961, when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962, when Negroes in Albany, Georgia, decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere. Because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. If I had sneezed. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963 when a black people in Birmingham, Alabama, arose the conscience of this nation and brought it into the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had the chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been there in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. And they were telling me, but you know, now it really don't matter now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning and we got started on the plane. There were 6 of us. The pilot said over the public address system, "We're sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane. And to be sure that all bags are checked, and to be sure that nothing would go wrong on the plane, we had to check out everything carefully. And we had the plane protected and guarded all night. And when I got into Memphis, and some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out, or what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter to me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live